There are 1,000,000 ways to die. We just wanna talk about it. Codeheads.
Welcome back to Codeheads, everyone.
Welcome back. We're very excited about today's episode, aren't we?
Well, we are very excited, but you don't sound it, but we are. We're pretty amped. I'm raring to go.
Mhm.
We are pretty amped because we are going to be talking about back to our, our favorite thing is code blues, so cardiac arrest events. And we're going to be talking about the cardiac arrest event, the code blue sequence in the movie, the Steven Spielberg movie, E.T. Extra-Terrestrial.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Real throwback, because actually it came out when I was just actually too young to watch it in 1982. I was
Yeah.
a baby.
I was 8 years old and saw it dozens of times in the 80s, and it was just the most captivating film. And we talked about Pulp Fiction like a few episodes ago, but this one was, our childhood, and rewatching it for the first time in probably 40 years, that influence and effect of it and the nostalgia that the impact on me. Like, I started to well up. Like, in menopause, I'm more prone to crying. This did it. This scene did it, that we're going to talk about today. I mean, the visceral reaction to the cardiac arrest of this alien.
And it may be that, now you know what you know, right? And,
Yes.
nostalgia, it might be a hint of PTSD with a sprinkling of trauma, because I will say that
Okay.
in the rewatch of E.T., I was like, God, this is a traumatic movie for a kid to watch.
Agonizing.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yeah, I actually watched it with my own kids, and because I remembered that it was just like a lovely movie and ET, like I didn't remember that scene, but holy moly. Um, we were all sobbing. It took us like 2 weeks to watch the movie because we had to keep stopping. Everyone was sobbing and no one could go back to it. Apparently we're a bunch of sensitive ladies in my house, but we finally nailed it. And thank God, we dug deep, but very traumatic. So I want to talk about, because there's just so much and it's so rich with this code and this cardiac arrest event. And it really is a guide kind of on how not to run a code blue. But I will share with you guys
Incoming fun fact.
the fun fact that Steven Spielberg wanted this scene to feel really like super realistic in the movie. So all of the government officials and scientists that are in this scene are actually real life doctors and nurses
Hmm.
from USC Medical Center. So they wanted the lingo to feel, super realistic, and just kind of dramatize it a little bit for the movie. But that's my interesting fun fact for this movie.
And that is neat because it lends some authenticity to it. I mean, we could make fun of it a lot, like, because it is so dramatized, but having actual, practitioners that, well, they don't work on aliens, but that have worked on have worked on humans, it does translate better for the audience, I think.
For sure, yeah. And excellent point that they have not worked on aliens before. And keeping in mind that the movie was filmed in probably 1981, 1980 to come out in
Yeah.
82. So as we've discussed in the history of CPR and history of many things, is that protocols change. And so comparing against 2020 guidelines is a little, we can't be too nitpicky because obviously a lot of things have changed. However, there are some things that have really not changed.
Okay, so let's set the scene. You have E.T., the extraterrestrial, on one table, and about 20 feet away is the young boy, Elliot. And they are physiologically connected somewhat. When one feels something, so does the other. That's how connected they became throughout the film. So E.T. has a nasal cannula on, which is very cute. He appears lethargic, cyanotic, and ashen, even though his baseline color is like a
Green.
dark and mossy, but you could tell he looks sick. They did a good job with that. He has a 4-lead on, so he has limb leads, one on each arm, and then there's 2 electrodes mid-clavicular, pretty low on the sternum. So they weren't using those as limb leads on the lower extremities. They look a little too low. And the other 2, like I said, bilateral upper extremity limb leads, that's to monitor his heart rhythm. He also has some electrode clips on his head. Like clipped to his head, I noticed. It's very dark. It's not a well-lit area at all to be doing such work. Now let's talk about just prior to going into cardiac arrest. This is what's really interesting. I don't know if it's a fun fact, but it's interesting. ET, because I like EKGs, I like cardiac rhythms, 12 leads.
Oh, we know.
Prior to arresting, he is actually in a flutter. If you look closely, either a 3 or 4 to 1 A flutter. Now, what's a flutter? For those of you who don't know, it's when the atria have these rapid coordinated contractions really fast, and a short circuit begins in the right atrium, travels in a repetitive counterclockwise motion over and over again throughout the atrium, and that's what gives it that classic sawtooth pattern. So it's one of my favorite rhythms because of that sawtooth pattern. So it's really cool to see that rhythm present just prior to him coding. Now, once he is starting to circle the drain, E.T., or rather the boy, Henry Thomas, who plays Elliot, he starts to go into a normal sinus rhythm, which is a perfect cardiac rhythm, one that ideally we all are presenting with right now. And when E.T. improves, when Elliot improves, that's when E.T. starts to succumb.
So a couple of little tidbits from that is that, which I did not recognize that he was an AFib. I should have.
Flutter.
I think. Oh, sorry, a flutter. You're correct. Is that we don't know if that might be baseline for an alien for like
Good
any
point.
like we don't know.
Right.
So I
It's
will
true.
say that. And on behalf of the these scientists in the movie, they were kind of, improving this whole scene, right? Because they just kind of set up like a whole hazmat like pop-up hospital like you would do in the military in the middle of like Elliot's house, like kind of
Yeah.
on the fly, you
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they probably didn't have ideal lighting and whatnot. And I guess ET's limbs are kind of questionable at best. You know what I mean? He kind of is a strange little shape. So they were doing the best. And I think the clips on his head might have been EEG reading,
Yeah.
what I was kind of
Yeah.
doing. Eh,
No,
But
it's true. Just and also to recognize one thing that we haven't really talked about, but we will just to mention it quickly is when we are critiquing codes, it's really easy to do when you're not there or part of it.
100%.
And that's why I try to someone like, oh, that code went awry because they did this, this, and this. And it's like, well, I wasn't there, so I'm not going to judge. And again, this isn't extraterrestrial. It's a little different, right? Not
Yeah.
something you see every day in the ER. So
And doing what we talk about all the time that we like is that people are thinking outside the box and they are doing some good improv because, there are guidelines that tell us what to do, but every situation, especially when you're like a medic and you're like going out to see, everything is so different than what, these idealistic
yeah,
videos and guidelines, and, in a perfect world,
yeah,
nothing's ever perfect. You have like somebody who's like wedged between a toilet and a, table saw and you're like, "Oh my god." You have to figure out how to extricate them and do compressions and, you know. So, yes, it's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but we're gonna do it a little bit on this one
of course.
because one of my biggest issues is that these were, in the movie, they were scientists and these were government officials and, they set up this whole, hazmat hospital pop-up thing in Elliot's house because they were so afraid that the alien, that ET, anything he touched would like, I don't know, give some sort of alien virus to everyone,
Mm.
right? So they had these whole hazmat suits on everyone. But the moment ET starts to go into cardiac arrest, they just rip everything off. It's like, oh, no precautions. We don't, it's
Yeah,
like and I think about, like, during COVID, like, you couldn't just do that. We had to stay protected. When Ebola was, a threat in the US and we were training everyone. No, you don't just rip everything off. We have donning and doffing,
yeah,
processes and protocols. Um, and it was just wild. They just removed everyone's
yeah.
masks, whatever, so that they could talk better or whatever.
It's really insightful. It's like all of a sudden, I mean, maybe they just felt like I can't move in this stuff and we need to get to work, but nonetheless, the timing is curious.
Yeah,
Eh,
at
eh,
best. And so it's like all of a sudden your health doesn't matter and this airborne, alien disease is gone now.
right,
Wild.
right.
So that I took umbrage with that scene, or that part of it, I will say. Um, and but alongside of that, I think one of my biggest concerns as and this is a Monday morning quarterbacking kind of situation, but their chest compressions on ET,
Oh, yeah.
abysmal. They were like massaging the poor little creature's
Yes.
chest.
Almost apologetic, like, don't wanna break any ribs, don't wanna I mean, they didn't have a chance of breaking any ribs the way they were going. What would you guess the depth was? I'm going with half inch at best.
Oh, at best, a half an inch, and at a rate of maybe, like, 60 to 80.
And I believe the physician, correct me if I'm wrong, said, how many do you do?" He said 60 per minute, and we
Yeah,
know the protocol now is 100 to 120, so we double that number.
and even back then, it was not 60
No,
per
no,
minute.
no, no. So,
So, that I did not care for, because
neither.
that's not CPR,
No,
period.
that's compressions to me is when I really start to get anxious on scene. When I see the compression stop and they're not done right, I get edgy quick
Oh,
because I know what's happening. But one
yeah,
other
like,
thing
"Put
to
me in,
note,
coach."
yeah, right. And one other thing to note, so there's a really a salient moment where ET has this final agonal gasp, right? It goes,
Mm,
ugh. And we all know what an agonal gasp is, defined by the AHA, imminent sign of arrest, which means you
mhm.
go right to work. Now, I counted the seconds between ET's agonal gasp and the first set of shitty compressions,
Yeah.
and it was 49 seconds
Oh my god,
because
that's
they
a
were
creepy
fumbling
visual.
around. They were grabbing things and which, totally could happen. Again, this is a chaotic, unprecedented scene and situation for these people, but they were doing everything but the compressions. And that that does happen sometimes. Like there
It
might be
does.
intuition. And again, it's an alien. We keep saying that, so you don't know, but hands on the chest. And I also noticed they were a bit low on the sternum.
Yeah.
And I don't know if ET possesses a xiphoid process, but his anatomy is a mystery. But
It
that bothered me too. Um,
Right, yeah, because you could break that xiphoid process, and
yeah,
that's or
he
push
looks
it
pretty
right into the
frail. He's a
yeah,
frail, his
the
bones are, you can see the prominence,
right, yeah. Yeah, he was like a nana, like one of those cachectic,
Yes.
nanas that we get. So you don't wanna
That's a great comparison. That's what it reminds me of, that body where you actually don't wanna push hard, because like, ugh, but he's he's a viable code, ET, he's
oh,
not he's a
mm, despite them making, errors. So A was the compressions,
mhm,
and then B, is that he flatlined. When he first rested, he went into asystole, which is, the beep, the
right,
flatline for those of us who are not in the medical field. And we've talked about this before, but asystole, you do not shock. It is not a rhythm that you give electricity to because it's really not going to do anything. There's no electrical activity in the heart cells, so there's really nothing to do. Um, but they shocked it, in the movie, and when
it
they shocked it, when they gave him, using, I believe, a life pack, like 3 or 5, it was one of the
the
original life packs.
paddles,
Yep, using the paddles, and
pretty cool.
they defibrillated him, and then he came back into a shockable rhythm.
Right, which never ever happens really.
Yeah, that is, like, against
And he went into V-fib, or it might have been polymorphic V-tach, but nonetheless, it's a shockable rhythm, which came from the flatline. But like that's good for the movie, but
it
it's not good,
in real life, that's not what happens, and
Now,
I don't think they shocked it again.
no, they didn't. He
Yeah.
called out totally. The doctor called out, well, one of the 5 or 6 team leaders called out, he's in V-fib, and that, you know, proceed already happened after the shock. So we're doing things out of order here
People
completely.
were like, "Cool."
But
Fib.
they were trying their damnedest with what they had.
They were. But I think that brings me to my next point too. There was so much shouting. The communication was crap on a cracker. They were screaming. There was no closed loop communication. Like
No.
all the things that we train and train and train and we actually do, there was none of it. Like there was no clear team leader. there was, it just everyone was yelling everything. It was the Wild West. Who's
Calm
doing
down,
what?
calm down, calm down. I heard
Oh
that
yeah,
a lot, which makes you not calm down.
we know that in the history of calming down, someone yelling at you to calm down has never worked.
No.
I don't care if it's in a hospital or on the
Right.
street, it does not work. To a child, just FYI, do not yell "calm down" to anyone. Calm down.
And
Um,
I mean, and your skill set might be excellent. You might know how to not run a code, but you might know how to do compressions perfectly and ventilate. But as we all know, a big reasons codes go awry often is not because of the skill level of the practitioner, but because of crap communication. So
yep.
great point you're making of what not to do.
Yeah, and the communication's important because you need to know, like, okay, what are we thinking and what are we going to do? What are the orders that are being thrown out there to do? So and then has someone done it? So, if I'm leading a code team, usually I'm saying, "Hey, Mike, can you, draw up 1 milligram of epi for, and administer IV?" And then Michael say, "Yes, I did that. 1 milligram of
Right.
IV epinephrine given," so we know. Um, and even if we're not being that structured, right? Because it's 1982 and it's an alien in the middle of a pop-up hazmat, hospital tent in someone's house, cool. But I'd say, "Hey, Mike, give some epi or somebody." And then that way, whomever would be like, "Yes, I gave epinephrine administered." But they're yelling out for some bertilium, and they're like, "We don't know if some bertilium was even given. And how much is some? A
That's
million
the only
milligrams?
medication.
Two?"
That was the only medication called for, right? I didn't hear
Yeah,
any other
yeah,
med called for it all. Right. No,
correct.
certainly no epi, just what is it, bertilium?
Bertilium, yeah,
Okay.
and some. So, I don't know if it's a bag, a cc,
He did have a drip set, I noticed, ET. I don't know what was hanging, but I saw, like, maybe 2 drip sets going into him, so
might have been LR. I mean, but you would
right.
think during a cardiac arrest that they would, like, push a medication.
Yes.
But I don't know alien protocols, full disclosure.
Yeah, no, and that's the issues we really can't judge because maybe aliens do need 60 compressions per minute at a depth of a quarter inch, you know? Who knows?
And one other thing with the communication that I feel was kind of a miss is that there was no real mention, or I didn't hear it in all of that chaotic chatter, was anything about, an advanced airway, like intubating him.
Yeah.
Because, they were bagging him. They had a mask over him, but we knew that that would be inefficient because of ET's kind of facial structure. We've talked about using a bag
Right.
mask, and it's hard on a human on the best of days, but never mind a strange kind of shaped alien
Yes. Yeah.
face. Um,
Right.
and there's no quality measure, like no end tidal CO2, so
No,
there's
and
no waveform capnography, nothing really to let us know, A, how the compressions were, and B,
yeah.
if he was getting any sort of the airway support.
And that's a great call about he that would be a time to not rush, but get to the advanced airway sooner than later to isolate the trachea because we have no idea. I mean, he said his face was so weird. Like we don't have equipment to manage an airway on a BLS level for that type of creature. But
Right.
talk about the person bagging the ventilator. Okay.
Yeah.
He's bagging, and I counted. He's and we're not doing any compression to ventilation ratio, anything, but he's bagging twice per second,
Hmm.
like, and he's squeezes the ambu with fervor, like the entirety of it. So I don't know ET's again, his respiratory anatomy. I don't know his tidal volume,
But he's
but
little. It can't be that big.
no, and so he's squeezing the whole bag, which is like 1,500 mLs. I believe it's attached to oxygen. I can't confirm that, but let's just assume. And so what is he doing? He's doing
He's
one of the
causing
worst things
barotrauma.
you could possibly do on a code or one of many. You're doing harm when you
Mhm.
hyperventilate and when you hyperoxygenate. We all know what happens: decreased cardiac output, decreased perfusion. I mean, I could go on all day about it. We are doing harm. And so this guy, someone should have really said a word, be more measured, a little
Right,
bit
well, yeah,
judicious with your ventilations. Cause yeah, I mean, he was blowing up ET's lungs, blowing up his stomach.
and then doing the compressions on the xiphoid process, we could have popped the lung really
Wow. We
really
really beat him up,
poor ET.
but
And yeah.
the ending.
Well, happy ending. I mean, so E.T., I mean, not to be spoiler alert right here, but so E.T. does succumb, so they think, to the code,
Sure.
and they don't really no neuroprognostication, no nothing. Like they just kind of let E.T. kind of like they're like, oh, he's dead, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, done. Well, he's dead, and they call it, right? And then they bag him and tag him for for alien purposes, but E.T. is brought back to life with love. The love of Elliot, and I think that love might be stronger than epinephrine because that's all he needed to save him, and he had Ross.
And I don't think love is emphasized enough on these codes that we work. It does have power.
It does.
So they should have pushed some love earlier, and perhaps they would have got Rosk sooner. Now, was he put in a nitrogen chamber? Is that what that was?
Oh, maybe that's what it was,
He
yeah.
was cooled and there was a giant tank. But here's the best. So he does come back following death, but it sort of reminds me of when you're working a code, right? And all of
Mhm,
a sudden you see the end title spike dramatically and you get so excited because that means you're going to get pulses back most likely.
yeah.
Here you get this heart aglow. Like that would be the reward. Can you imagine if it worked like
Yes.
that? Like imagine.
Oh.
That's what I want.
I agree. I mean, when his heart ever started, because my children were sobbing at this point, and so was I,
I
full
was too.
disclosure.
Huh.
And then when we saw the heart later, I was like, "Oh my God, you guys, he's coming back!" And it just if as a practitioner, if oh my God, if that actually happened in a code, I mean, that would make my love. I mean, honestly, that's when I do feel like love is stronger than epi. But I will say, love has got to be stronger than bertilium. I think we nailed the code, but we left out one major thing because we're going to talk about it next week. Is family presence.
Okay.
Because they absolutely did talk about trauma. They did a misjustice to the family. They missed a lot here by alien guidelines or human guidelines. But we'll talk about family presence because that's a huge piece of the puzzle for us humans these days. Um, and probably for aliens too if ET comes back. But we hope you enjoyed our breakdown of ET cardiac arrest, and we will see you guys next time. Until then.
There are 1 million ways to die. We just wanna talk